Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's show. You know, some pretty wicked weather went through here this past week, and it was enough to convince me that it was time to talk about emergency preparedness. Now, we've done articles about this on theoldish.com in the past. However, sometimes people don't like to read stuff as much as they like to just watch and hear the information. So this show is for you because 'tis the season. Wicked weather, tornadoes, heat, intense heat at times. These are all things we need to be prepared for and understand how to cope with it, how to look after ourselves, because we don't always know that there will be others around to help us. If a tornado goes through, everybody's in the same boat, and the shock that overcomes a community in a situation like that can mean that it can be several hours, if not days, before help actually comes to you. Now, I know that some of the tornadoes that went through here a few days ago were at the level of a Category 1 hurricane. So for those of you in our viewership who don't get tornadoes but get hurricanes, a Category 1 hurricane. I believe the winds were 132 kilometers an hour. So, you know, that was pretty devastating. Whole communities are pretty messed up. Houses are gone. So, you know, we need to talk about that. Let's start with how to get out of your house and where to go. Do you know how to get out of your house? Do you have 2 or 3 or more escape routes from your house? And once you get out, do you know where to go? Do you know what a downed power line looks like? Do you know that you need to stay well back from them? You need to know that. I mean, it makes sense, I know, but staying back from power lines can be crucial. You don't need to just step on it. You need to be close to it for it to be able to do some damage. And if you have a pacemaker, it can affect your heart as well. So be aware of that. Does your town have an identified gathering spot? Someplace where you know where to go in the event of a fire, tree branches down, tornadoes blowing through. Is there a spot where your municipality designates for you to go to get information and to find help? If not, you need to ask. Ask your local municipal councillor or mayor where that spot might be. And if they don't have one, maybe they should think about that. How about falls? You know, I'm very big on preventing falls, but in a state of confusion, our mind plays some odd tricks on us. And, you know, if it's dark outside because the power went out, if winds have whipped up and blown obstacles in your path, you need to train your brain to watch out for these. It's like muscle memory. If you train your brain to do it on a day-to-day basis, then in a time of a traumatic event, you're more likely to be able to just do it automatically. So pay attention to that. Medications, do you know where they are? Can you get to them quickly? In the event of some kind of an emergency, you might not be able to get to them at all. In which case, it becomes ever so important to have a list of those medications with you at all times. Now, we've talked about this before too. You can go to theoldish.com, and if you have a membership, it's free. You can sign up. We just don't need to have your password. And under the toolkit at the top menu bar, you can drop it down, and there's a medication checklist. You can put in all of your medications, your blood type, your doctor, your emergency contact. It's all there. If you don't want to use ours, that's fine. Have one of some kind, because if you can't get to your medications, you need to be able to tell emergency responders what you need, what quantities, when you take it, how often, the whole thing. And again, in a time of a traumatic event, you might not be thinking quite as clearly as you would at other times when you might know this stuff right off the top of your head. So be aware of that. Speaking of things that you need to be prepared for, smartphones. Now, you can keep our medication list in your smartphone. You can download it to your smartphone. However, smartphones are a really interesting topic because you need to make sure that they're going to be charged. One of the things that people looked for constantly in the last hurricane in the States, I was seeing this all the time. People needed cell phone chargers. Where are my cell phone chargers? And of course, every manufacturer makes a different cell phone charger. So make sure you have yours handy. Do you have a power bank? You know, it's one of those little portable things that you plug it in, and when it is fully charged, it will then be able to charge your cell phone 2 or 3 times before you need to plug the power bank back in and charge it again. Those are really handy things to have. And there are also some being made now that are solar powered, even better in a disaster or emergency situation. Or even if your house is just out of power. The power goes out. It can be out for a few minutes. It can be out for a few days or longer. You need to be able to keep your cell phone charged so that you can stay in touch, so that people know you're okay, and so that if you need help, you can call for help. Okay, do you use a CPAP machine? How about an electric wheelchair? You need to have the chargers for those available as well. Alternatively, you need to know where in your town you can go to access a charge for those appliances. Okay, pretty important. Write all of this stuff down. Write down where you need to go to get stuff, to access chargers, to access medical care, where your town emergency center is, because again, in an emergency, our brains are not working right. They can be befuddled, and it can take a while before we understand what has really happened and can process it. But in the meanwhile, you're just living in this la-la land of, did this really happen? Did it really? Is this a dream? Am I going to wake up? It might not be a dream. I mean, I wish it was, but it might not be. Write it all down so that you know where to go. Okay, so how about food? If the power goes out in your house, and that's the worst of what happens, the Red Cross tells us we need to have a 2-week supply on hand. So a 2-week supply of food and water. Okay? So in terms of food, you want to eat your perishables first. You can eat the food in your freezers, but if the freezers start to thaw, you need to be very cautious about that food. Don't take chances. Throw it out rather than eat it if you're unsure. Think about things that you can keep on hand, like dried beans, dried pasta, things that you can cook up on your own. Okay? Think about having those in your house. I know a lot of us stocked up with that kind of thing during the pandemic. But it's probably something we could think about keeping in our homes as a routine in case of, not just because they're good to eat in regular times, but in case of. Okay, a couple of don'ts. Don't try to heat your house with a gas stove. Don't bring your gas or propane barbecue indoors to cook with. You could be exposing yourself to gases that could kill you. So don't do that. Don't eat food you're doubtful about. How about heat? Now that can go on for days. And heat stroke is something that you need to be very aware of. So if your community has a cooling center, know where that is. Know how you're going to get there as well, because it might not be a simple journey for somebody who doesn't drive. If you want to go to a cooling center and you drive, think about your neighbors, and maybe you can be the chauffeur that gets them all there safely. and everybody can get cool. But of course, we want to make sure that you stay hydrated. That means no caffeine and no alcohol. Don't worry, the alcohol will keep. That's not something you have to worry about spoiling. It'll all keep. But those things are not going to help keep you hydrated. Know the symptoms of heat stroke. So I'm going to read them off for you. High blood temperature, altered mental state or behavior, nausea, vomiting, flushed skin, rapid breathing, racing heart rate, headache, an alteration in sweating. Now, this is something that's interesting. An alteration in sweating. In a heat stroke from hot weather, your skin will feel hot and dry. However, a heat stroke from exercising, so if you're out gardening and you get heat stroke, or riding a bike or walking and you get heat stroke, your skin's going to feel different. It could feel slightly dry or slightly moist. So you have to look for these other symptoms to be present as well. If you suspect that any of those symptoms are present, get the individual inside. If it's you, get inside, get into the shade at the very least, even if it's outdoors. You can get cool towels or even ice packs wrapped in towels. Put them on the neck, the top of the head, under the armpit, or on the groin. Of course, the first thing you want to do is call for medical attention. That is job one. After you get them into the shade, call for medical attention. While you're waiting for medical attention, you can do the cool towel under the armpits or on the back of the neck. You can just try to cool them down that way. If you're outdoors, you might also want to gently spray a garden hose on them to wet them down, cool them off. If you're inside the house, a shower or a cool bath would work as well. Okay? So it's all about thinking ahead and planning, because you need to have these options available to you. Okay? If this happens, if any of these events happen, bad weather, power outages, or very high heat, and you're okay, check on your neighbors. They might not be okay. Until next week, look after yourselves, look after your neighbors, and be well.